everyone, my name is Kit Colbert, and with me is Jared Rosoff. We hope you enjoyed watching the application modernization launch. We covered a lot of exciting material there, but we only skimmed the surface. So here we'd like to dive a little deeper into VMware Cloud Foundation. As we talked about with VMware Cloud Foundation 4, we've got a bunch of new exciting capabilities. But one of the most important ones is how VMware Cloud Foundation can now help developers and IT operations better work together. Jared, what are the problems that we're seeing as we talk to customers about collaboration between IT operations and developers?
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of issues today. I mean, one of the things we find is that in a lot of customers, developers are still using ticket-driven processes to get access to infrastructure. And this is just slow and an outdated way of getting access to things. Developers need a self-service way of getting access to infrastructure. Secondly, there's a bunch of functions that IT traditionally centralizes, things like performance management, disaster recovery, high availability, and security. But what we find is that in modern applications, oftentimes these things, the application team ends up taking on responsibility for those functions themselves. And while they can achieve those things, the problem is that subtracts from the productivity of those developers. Those are all engineering cycles that are spent not building new features for your application.
So that was a good summary of the challenges that we're seeing between IT operations and developers. But I think we're also entering into a more complex world. There's just multi-cloud, there's a lot of different technologies out there. How is that changing things?
Well, it's making everything more complicated because, first of all, my applications are more complicated. They're big distributed systems instead of individual VMs. It's multi-cloud. I'm trying to run things at the edge, in multiple geographic regions, in my own data centers. And all of this creates a lot of complexity, both for the developer in terms of how they actually deploy their software to these places, but also for IT in terms of how I provide governance and control over this diverse landscape.
So people are seeing these problems today, and they're trying to deal with them. But how have their solutions come up short?
Well, there's really kind of two ways people have done this. One is for developers to kind of bypass IT entirely and go use external services. The other is to try to build up their own kind of environment on top of the virtualization platform that IT is providing for them. Now, both of those solutions are kind of problematic. Like in both cases, I end up losing the central governance and control over those apps. If I go off onto a native cloud service, now IT can't manage the security or performance or availability of that service anymore. If developers start to build up their own platform on top of virtualization, once again, IT can no longer provide that governance and control. Moreover, when developers start to build their own platforms like that, that's all time they're spending not adding features to the application, but instead compensating for deficiencies in the infrastructure.
So we talk about VMware Cloud Foundation 4 with vSphere 7, which includes Kubernetes. We now have this foundational new platform. So how does this new platform solve all these challenges that we just talked about?
Well, first of all, it's all self-service. So no matter where you're running Cloud Foundation, whether it's in public cloud or your data center or at the edge, same self-service interface, same consistent services. So developers, get that fast experience they want. But also, because we're enabling IT to manage all those services that are being delivered to developers, they can still provide that centralized governance and control over all the applications developers are building.
And I would imagine another big aspect as well is that we're enabling IT operations and developers to actually speak the same language.
Exactly. So now that you have this self-service driven process, things as simple as like the name of a component that's running in my application are shared between the IT admin and the developer. So when you have an outage or an issue and I'm trying to ask you how to fix this thing, we're talking the same language and we can see the same information.
Same objects, all that sort of thing.
Exactly.
So it really can change how an organization functions, right?
Exactly. Really, IT can become an enabler of developer productivity across the enterprise.
That's really exciting. And I think another exciting aspect there as well is for the role of the VI admin, of these IT operations teams. VI admins originally started, of course, just doing compute virtualization, server virtualization. But that very quickly extended into storage and networking virtualization. And now we're essentially adding this Kubernetes type concept there as well to enable them to support these modern applications for developers.
Yeah, so what we've done is we really elevated vCenter and the management tools to be application-centric. So instead of thinking about it as I'm managing the infrastructure, now I'm managing the applications that my developers are running on top of that infrastructure. But I'm doing it with the tools and techniques that I've always used, storage policies and all the capabilities of vSphere that I'm accustomed to.
So this is really a huge opportunity for VI admins to extend their skill set, but doing so, again, from a familiar environment.
Exactly. You don't have to throw away all the things you've learned over the last 20 years and relearn a whole new stack of technologies. You can do it all using the skills and techniques and tools that you've built up over your career.
So this technical solution that we have here can actually enable better organizational change, better organizational collaboration.
Exactly. As soon as developers call IT, one of the biggest things we heard from our customers was that IT spends the first hour of that call trying to figure out which virtual machine the developer's talking about, what changed about it. Now all of that's explicit. They can get right down to solving whatever issue is going on.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what we're talking about here is organizational transformation, the evolution of the VI admin role via VMware Cloud Foundation 4 and vSphere 7 with Kubernetes. Really, really exciting stuff. To learn more, please check out VMware.com. Thank you.